Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. And I'm always very excited when I have a guest who is very successful running a business in the construction industry, but also has a passion for improving the industry like I do. And so that's today's guest. I have Matt DiBara, who is the founder of DiBara Masonry in California. He's also a co-founder of the Contractor Consultants. Uh, hey Matt, how are you?
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. And today's conversation is really about, I want to talk about your business and how that's going, but I also want to focus on how contractors can take steps to improve their hiring and practices and to keep good people when they find them and to get rid of good people, bad people when they're, not performing as they need to. So before we dive into all that, tell us about your business, how it got started and how it's going.
Yeah, so my family's been in the industry. We can track it 104 years. Starts back in Italy. Yeah, so just basically yesterday. Starts back in Italy. Both my great grandfathers were masonry and concrete contractors and home builders. Came to America, and that passed down to my grandfather, my father, and my uncle. And then I started when I was 9. Picking up trash on job sites, and kind of grew in the business ever since.
Gotcha. And you opened your own masonry company in
Correct.
California, right?
Yep, I came out to California. I was licensed. Long story with my dad. There was some marketing things I wanted to do, and he didn't agree. So he's like, "Go get your own license." So I ended up when I was in college got my own license. So we had two similar family companies for a while on the East Coast, and then Italian families. That's how it goes. Well, like most family businesses, and then I came to California and restarted it out there as well.
So you say that you wanted to do things your father wasn't comfortable with. And I see that a lot in the industry, especially the younger generations taking over and parents either not wanting to take the next steps or so what were some of those things that you wanted to improve on that he wasn't interested in?
So, my dad did many, many, many things right in the business. Taught me, we had invaluable lessons passed down in the family, but the big one was around technology and it was around marketing specifically. So, this was when people were just starting to get websites, or just starting to use online lead gen platforms like, Angie's List at the time and Home Advisor, which used to be Service Magic. If, this was like the turn, Yellow Pages was going down and these digital platforms were coming up. And I really wanted to have control of the marketing. And I remember in 2008 when we had the recession there, I was petrified because there were people my dad knew that had 9-figure companies and we were going to buy their equipment. And so I'm a young kid, I'm just learning, I'm running crews. And, Jack, for example, was my dad's friend, mega mansion, super wealthy. And then a year and a half later, we're going to his house and picking through his tools. He's like, I'll sell this for $100. And I'm as a kid, I'm horrified. I'm watching this and I'm going, holy crap. Like I thought Jack was, what we all wanted to be. And so if Jack's not invincible, we're not. And so that sparked the obsession of how do we get control of our lead flow. And I was very adamant about it. I was like, Dad, this is like not a if, but a when, and we have to get ahead of this. And so that's what sparked the shift there.
Gotcha. So tell me how it started. Like you started with just you. Tell me
Yeah,
all the things about starting it.
100%. So business started. So my dad would have had me out there at 5 years old if my mom would have let him. That was the old school kind of, it was like that mentality of, if you could walk, you could work was, kind of how I was raised. And
Mhm.
9 years old was when I first started. Went out, got a pair of work boots, my whatever grade summer that was, and started in the field. My dad handed me a trash bag. He was like, pick up all the trash, go to the other trades, pick up their trash. And that was it. And then he's like, all right, great. You've graduated to sorting rocks now. And then it was mixing mortar before I could lift the bags. He taught me, bag then was 94 pounds. It was back when you had to mix the lime with the Portland cement and the sand. It didn't come pre-mixed mortar. And I couldn't lift the bag. So he hands me a razor blade. He cut the bag. He's like, 5 is half bag, 10 is full bag. You'll figure it out, kid, and walked away. So that was like my on the job training in construction. So, but we did one thing right, one thing very right, I think, and that stayed with us, which was my dad had no care whatsoever for hierarchy. Like, didn't care if you were here a day or 10 years. He's like, when you can mix mortar and bring it over there and the guys give you a thumbs up, he's like, I'll pay you an extra dollar an hour. When you get here, I'll give you this. And so I had performance pay at 9 years old. So I was very motivated at a young age, to learn things. I'm like, how much do I get if I could lay brick that? He's like, I'll give you $2 an hour more. So I'm practicing at night, weekends. And so that performance pay model is why at 14, 15, I'm running crews, it's because two things. Number one, I was motivated. And number two, I started at the bottom. So the crews respected me because I picked up their trash. I got them their waters. I rolled up their hoses and extension cords for 3 or 4 years. So it wasn't like, oh, boss's kid's here. What kind of special treatment?
Yeah.
It was like, hey, we understand. They used to call me Junior because I'm a junior. They're like, all right, Junior, let's hop on the line. Let's do this. And that's really kind of like the growth, the mature growth in the company came from that mentality.
Gotcha. So how's business going currently?
So yeah, so came to California, reinvented kind of or reinvigorated the brand. I'm always a big proponent of being a wide laned specialist, and so we're licensed general contractor. We hold 6 licenses, but we do residential work, commercial work, and government prevailing wage work. So 3 divisions, and then within that we do
Mm,
masonry and concrete. And so business is fantastic. It's we have a multi scope kind of process. So we take on a decent amount of the masonry, concrete, hardscaping side of things. So we've been very fortunate to grow the business. We got recognized by Congress, I think it was last year, for quality and
that's
craftsmanship for
awesome.
the 100-year legacy. So we've done a lot of good things, but I think I stand on the shoulder of my the family generations that really helped carve out the principles that we follow today.
So tell me about the contractors consultants. What is that and what is your hopes for it?
Well, so it was a big accident. Is that entire company, all of it. So it was right around, I want to say 2019 or 2020, end of 2019, I think it was. And I was at the pinnacle of the California business. I was doing 3 or 4 celebrity homes, their projects. I was doing the Veterans National Cemetery. They had a big contract. We were doing something to the tune of like 20 or 30,000 pieces of granite. It was a big high profile job and a few other projects. And I remember feeling like there was a moment I actually got emotional. I was driving home and I was like, wow, my great grandfathers, got on a boat, crossed the ocean for like what we're doing today. And it was really a proud moment, but I was ignoring one thing. So I was so focused on sales and marketing, I wasn't paying attention to the hiring. And my team was like, Matt, we've had ads up for, on Craigslist for 2 weeks and we haven't gotten anybody. Matt, we're on Indeed. And I'm like, don't worry about it. We just signed $1 million job. We're good. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, it was just like, we'll get to it. Don't worry about it. Like high five and all that stuff. Because I thought you could sell your way out of anything because I had the 2008 mentality. I'm like, if you have work, you will win. And then I was wrong. I was very wrong. And I got punished for it. They brought me in. It was like kind of the pinnacle. And they brought me in a room and they had all these different, I like whiteboards. So they had whiteboards, my management team. And they were like, hey, here's all the jobs. Because like the little conversations weren't working. So like, we're going to show you, give us an hour, we'll show you. So long story short, here's all the people that are canceling. Here's all the job overruns. And it was all data. I was losing about $1 million in 3 weeks was like inevitable. Like it was just gone. And then it was going to be, okay, I might be able to in the next 3 or 4 weeks get ahead of this. But it was a horrible feeling. My dad used to say as a kid, he's like, don't waste the 3 generations before you. And that was a big thing for me. And so I told myself at that moment, I said, I'm going to obsess over hiring the same way I did over sales and marketing, whatever at that point. It would have been 12, 13 years prior. And if I don't get this, I'm going to shut the company down. Like I'm going all in. I called my accountant because I'm not, I didn't learn business, right? I grew up as a bricklayer. So I called my CPA. I'm like, listen, what's the most amount of money I can spend based on this and this? Put that in a separate account. And I just started like coaches, mentors, recruiters, everything I could do. I hired assistants to manage this stuff. And my end goal was simple. It was to understand a consistent, predictable way to hire. And it came from the belief that there was a better way to do it. And if there was a better way, I was going to find it. And it just it evolved into me making traction and then me showing my local friend contractors how to do it, to then joining a trade association and doing a presentation for them. Like, hey, here's how I find people and here's how I vet them, to then building an online course because I got really passionate about it. Then we got that in the hands of ZipRecruiter. One of the co-founders actually looked at everything we did and he's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, holy crap. And so it grew, but it grew from this place of like, I just was obsessed with how do I do this for me? It wasn't going to make a business, and then I remembered my dad, as a kid, one of his big things, I think there was 2, the sales and marketing. And the other one was he had this issue with hiring. He used to say, nobody's going to ever work as hard as family, nobody, you can't trust people if they're not like, he had these old school beliefs and I get where they came from, but one of our competitors had 1,000 employees. I'm like, Dad, we got like 48, 52, like, they got 1,000. I'm like, clearly there's got to be some way to do this. And so that was really my desire, was to scale the information. And then we ended up doing a done for you service. When I finished this course, we get all these accolades, we start, and again, all accident. I was like, I'm going to make the most comprehensive version of what I was doing. That's where it came from. And we get ready to sell this course, and online I get some guy on Facebook and one of the ads, and he's like, if you're so good at doing this, he's like, why don't you just do it for us, fake guru, or some hate thing, right? And I was like, at first I got mad. I'm like, I fund all this. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building this out. I'm like, no, this isn't like VC money. It's not like get rich quick. I'm like, this is stuff I've proven. Like, I have 37 proven ways to find candidates. Like, this is stuff that we did tons of things to figure all this out. Millions of dollars spent learning this information. So I got upset, and then I said, you know what? He's right. Like, why don't I shift to actually doing it? And so then I got obsessed with, well, what do recruiters do? What do staffing companies do? How can you do it better? And so we ended up doing kind of a done for you service. But it all came from just me loving the industry, loving the hardworking men and women that get up every day and do this. And if there's a little contribution I can have to this space, I mean, that's what fueled me.
Well, obviously, I want you to tell me the secrets. How do you find and hire good people?
Yeah, I
The
think
condensed version. I still want them to take your course, but tell me all the
no.
tell
I
me
mean,
all
I
the
want to
condensed version of
give
that.
actionable things. I mean, so there's a couple fundamental things, right? One is, it starts with belief structure and time allocation. So belief structure is, we have so many people who are like, it's impossible, right? I can't do it.
Yes.
And if you believe that, your actions follow that. And so, we have clients, and what we do is, I usually, like, we had a client, I think a couple weeks ago, and he's in a small town, and he's like, no, there's nobody there. I said, well, okay, you're in HVAC. Let's look up your competitors. Let's see how many people are licensed in HVAC in your area, right? Let's see how many competitors you have. Let's see who they are, what they're doing. And we found dozens of qualified competitors. We found that, the average one had about 15 to 18 employees. So we started doing math. I'm like, okay, it's about 180 people, not counting entry level, not counting people that may have left the industry that we might be able to entice back. I'm like, you need to find 2 people. I'm like, so it starts with that, because that, I think, fuels it. And then
I agree.
I think we then need to look at it like, we spend so much time trying to attract customers, right? We market to customers, and we treat customers a certain way, right? When we think of that, we care how we look up online to our customers. We get back to our customers right away. Like, there's certain fundamentals in the way we handle the front end of, call it the front end of the business, right? Like acquiring customers.
Yep.
But then the problem is, the fundamental issue is, now the hardest customer to get is people who work for your business, right? Your internal clients. And so, all right, how do you do that? Well, there's 37 proven ways, but a couple things that tried and true principles. Number one, we call it would you work for you in the course, but Google yourself. Imagine you know nothing about your company. Type in your name, and look at your online profile. Do you have good reviews? Do you have a career video, which is a short 90-second to 2-minute long video that showcases you, your teams, your company, your culture, that a potential candidate can fall in love with? Do you have a career page that talks about the benefits? Like, what do you look like online to a prospective employer? A lot of companies, small and large, do this exercise, and they go, yeah, if I didn't know anything about this company, not a lot sticking out. So managing that profile is one. Running a competitor audit. So like, when we take on clients, it's all relative. So one of the big misconceptions about hiring, and the best way to sum it up, I was on a speaking panel, and there were 7 hiring and retention experts, ostensibly. And so I'm at this convention. The guy to my left, clearly grassroots contractor, been in the business 40 years. He says, the best way to hire, basically the only way to hire, kiss babies, shake hands, go to church, meet people, right? So he's to my left. So then woman to my right reaches across me to grab the microphone. She goes, well, I don't know about that. She says, we're in the digital age, keyword testing, headline testing, job postings. She's like the digital side of it, geofencing, things like that. And I paused, I grabbed the mic, and I said, here's the interesting thing. All of these methods will work. It depends on your local market, right? Like every market's different. And that's what upset me in the beginning was I was buying these programs, I was hiring mentors, and everyone's telling me this is the way to do it. And then I would try it in LA for Masons and I'm getting nothing. And then I would tell, Mike, my friend who owns a fence company, right? Vinyl fencing, and he's hiring 6 people in 6 weeks. And I'm like, so it's so local specific to like how aggressive are your competitors with their compensation, with their marketing? Like, how well are your competitors doing directly impacts as well as how big is the labor pool. So you have these other
Yeah.
factors. Like if your competitors are really aggressive and there's a small labor pool, you're pulling out all the stops. But then if your competitors aren't doing super well, you might be able to get by with like a decent, maybe you don't even have a career video. Maybe you're just posting on Indeed, doing some keyword testing, things like that. But when you do the competitor audit, it's a really powerful exercise because you can figure out what you as a candidate, if you were going to look for a job, right? Like let's say I want to be a mason in Los Angeles. Well, I'm going to type in masonry jobs Los Angeles. What do I see?
Mm-hmm.
Who do I see? What are they paying? What looks good? Like that simple exercise. I know companies that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on HR and online platforms. A lot of them haven't taken the candidate's journey, right? And then they ask for all these different requirements, like send us the resume, send us this, send us that. I think it's about reducing friction if you're in a competitive market. Another thing I think listeners can do is implement a skills assessment. So especially for these hands-on related roles, but really all of them, office managers, COOs, I mean, you can go all the way up to the C-suite, but specifically in field, one of the coolest things you can do is you can do a paid skills assessment. So you call John applies, right? John has a driver's license, got a decent resume. What do you do next? You put him in the field with your team, and then you got this transient, like in and out, you try them out for half a day. Your team's like, oh, we got another one. Let's see if they make it. Like it kills culture. So you can bring them, you can bring them to your shop and do a paid assessment where, 4 hours or 8 hours, you can have them build something. Like for us, it's a sheet. They flip it over, the brick's there, the mortar's there, the block's there. We do like an intake. We pay them a flat rate, and we get to see what they can do. Nice thing about this, there's 3. Number 1, if they're not good, they either don't show up or they don't stay for the whole thing, and it doesn't cost you much or anything, right? number 2, I'm not wearing out my team by bringing somebody in and saying, hey, try this guy out or gal and see if they work, because that kills culture. If you do that enough times, they kind of give you that like, all right, well, okay, here's another master mason that's coming in, then they don't make it to lunch. I was the guy doing that with my dad. I used to send him home. I'm like, Dad, you want him till 4, or can I send him home now? He's like, send him home. Like, I get it. And then the last thing is you can reward the all-stars before they ever come through the door. So like when we started doing this, an interesting thing happened. I had a guy, his name was John, came to work for my company. He did this assessment. This guy blew us away. Right? Blew us away. Mm-hmm. So the pay that we were going to offer him, we ended up offering him 20% more. And on top of that, we left the thing that he built, we left it up at our yard. I was like, let's leave this up. So when my crews, my other foreman would come in and out, they would be like, oh, who built this? Whoa, look at this. We're like, oh, this is the new foreman, John, he's coming on board. And like, wow, I want to work with him. Like, so there's all these little things that kind of trickle off of that, but it allows you to validate their skill set and their experience quickly. Trade schools is another one. We call it partner lists or a one-to-many strategy. So most people, like if you have a project manager, estimator role, or you want to do like some hands-on roles, looking at the vocational schools in your area, the trade schools, colleges, you can reach out to the heads of those departments. We call it a one-to-many strategy because you talk to one person there and they can send out an email to their entire alumni list, right? And say, hey, we've got this job opening. It's for this. And now you're in front of, you're in front of hundreds of potential candidates, and very few people I find do all these things. So now it's like, okay, most companies, if you're saying I can't hire, it's like, well, have you gone to all the trade schools and universities? Have you made sure your pay is competitive and your online profile is competitive? Do you have a skills assessment that guarantees speed in the interview process, right? You could talk all day, but if it's in field, great. You can do it, get them in because you can move quick. So these are just a few things.
Gotcha. And so what are some interview questions you would ask? I like the skills assessment. Do you have another interview where you're asking them questions? What does that look like?
So the interview process, there's a couple ways to do it. I like to start. So a lot of people like to take you through their journey, like take me through when you started in the business and and talk through it. I like to start from most recent experience going backwards, because it's kind of like the ABCs. We all know the song and dance of like, well,
Mhm.
I started when I was 9 and then this and then that. It's like, that part's easy, but take me the other way. You have to think a little bit more. And
Mhm.
typically I care about most relevant experience first. So I usually have them recite going from most recent backwards. One trick that I found, and the data on this is I don't know that it's scientific, but I've talked to many contractors and it's they found the same thing. If you find somebody who's in the field, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, masonry, concrete, and they tell you how passionate they are, they love their work, they love what they do. If you ask this question, awesome. Do you happen to have any photos of anything, maybe in your phone? I have found a direct correlation between people scrolling through photo after photo after photo after photo and them being great in the field, taking pride in their work, coming home and showing their family, texting their buddies. Like, there's a direct correlation between that, in my opinion, versus the ones where they're like, oh, well, I don't have any. I keep them on my other phone, or like, yeah, like they might have got deleted. Like, you can sit with somebody
Yeah.
for 30 minutes. They tell you how passionate they are. If you ask for photos, you're going to learn a lot. And then you can dive in to, and one of my favorite questions is, what involvement specifically did you have in this project? Because a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, I built this X. What involvement specifically did you have in this one? Well, I was the one, I helped dig out I dug the holes and I kind of brought the material in. Nothing wrong with that, but it's a little different than thinking you built the house, right? Like, so couple little tricks to get, the A players to the front of the line.
Okay, so then you got them hired. They got good skills. How do you keep them? That especially, it's been really tumultuous the last couple of years, getting people and then keeping people. What are some
So
of your tips on that?
yeah, we go over this in the course. We do this with our clients. There's a couple like key things you can do. I call them like the low hanging fruit. One is set them up for success early. And there's two ways to do this. One is make sure that they've got a clear understanding of what the first 2 weeks are going to look like. Like, you sit down with them, you onboard them, you give them their passwords, you give them a work phone if they need it, keys to the truck. Like, really focus on the first 2 weeks. The other thing that we found is if you overemphasize check-ins, it's a really good safety net for a company that might be growing. You might not have an HR person. You might I get what it's like to be a smaller company where everything's not perfect. So it's like you live in two worlds. You either get it perfect or you put checks and balances in place to catch what might fall through. So
Yeah.
for many of us, it's the latter, right? And so what you can do is when somebody comes on board, you say, look, here's how our check-in process works. We do a formal sit down check-in, 2 weeks, then 30 days, then 3 months, and then we do a revolving if you want to do quarterly. Some people do it every 3 months or 4 or 6. But what you find when doing that is you're able to number, and we tell at my company, we say you're eligible for a raise at all of those intervals. And so what's really cool is like people who come in and crush it after 2 weeks, you're like, hey, here's a small raise because you did X, Y, Z. They love that. They come home and tell their families, I got a raise in 2 weeks. This is crazy. And if they're worth it and they did it because you set the right performance pay, it's like, great. But it also gets like the little inconsistencies out of the way, right? Where you can sit them down and you're like, hey, I noticed you were a little late this day. Like, you don't have to make a big thing because the next time you talk to them is 30 days. So it's an easy way to catch it. That's like the forefront of it, the proper communication and expectations. Then on the back end of it, and this was kind of an accident. I discovered this about 5 years ago. So I was having trouble with coming up with a specific performance pay for the team. I'm like, it's some team members have certain influence over things. It's hard to like pin exactly what they're going to do, and crews change. And like, how do we, it felt like I was going to need a lawyer and a 20-page document to figure it out. So we came up with this idea where we took these company branded poker chips and we made a spinning wheel, and we made prizes from like a $25 7-Eleven gift card or Starbucks card or whatever up to, it could be like a $250 like Airbnb gift card so they could go away with their family or whatever, right? You got to pay, you got to do the scale based on where you're at as a company. And then I told my management team, anytime somebody does something exceptional that we want to see more of, got a great review from a client, finished a job early, came and helped another team finish, like anything you really want to reinforce, let's give away these tokens. So something very interesting happened. I was probably about 3 months into this experiment,
Mhm.
and we had made these little wedges on this wheel. And when we made it, we were off by one. We had one big wedge that for whatever reason didn't line up. So we went to the team and we said, what prize would you like? It can't be monetary value because we've already ran a budget on it, like a silly prize. And one of my guys came back and said, I want a rubber chicken. So we came up with a rubber chicken that you could win. So I would watch these monthly, we'd get the whole team together for a team breakfast or team late lunch. Everyone comes, they redeem these spins. We say what they did right. They spin it, they get their prize. And it was really fun, got everyone together. About 3 months in, I would listen with headphones because my team would record these meetings. I wouldn't be at them usually, and I would listen and see what was happening, and I would analyze, how is this experiment working? So 3 months in, I hear squeak, 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 squeak. Like I couldn't even hear the noise. So I'm like, because I was doing work while I was listening. So I go to the video and I look, and I see 9 grown men squeezing rubber chickens. I see one of my foremen walking up, and he's like, rubber chicken, rubber. So now you have 50, 60 people screaming rubber chicken, right? They put the thing down, spinning this wheel, right? And I stopped. I remember I paused the video and I went, wow, rubber chicken cost me $2. I said, there's a $250 Airbnb gift card. There's a $100, car wash or gas card. Like there's all these monetary things and they all want a rubber chicken. What did I take away from this? I took away, when you can find the things that are fun and unique to your company, at the end of the day, it's like the monetary thing is great and we all want that. But if you're paying people well, how are you bringing fun back into your company? Like the camaraderie, the family, and the fun. Because we spend so much time as owners or managers and we're just trying to put out fires. We're like, I got to fill this role. I got to do this job. I got to do that. But we forget sometimes that this is their entire, you can't want somebody to stay for their entire career and then forget that it's their career.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. That's some great information. Um, so what platforms do you see, like if somebody couldn't afford to hire somebody, what platforms do you think are best suited to finding people in the construction industry?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can use Indeed, Craigslist, ZipRecruiter. You post on a lot of different job boards if you can find them. Again, it comes down to a multifaceted approach. You'd also want to, I would recommend incentivizing your team. So we have great data on this, incentivizing your team saying, hey, if we hire this, you get that. But doing it in a one-on-one fashion gets you way better results. So instead of like team meeting, $100 if I get this, $300 if you get that, instead you sit them down individually and you're like, hey, so I know you love the Dodgers, right? I'm going to be giving awesome Dodger tickets away if you find X. So if you know anybody, if you haven't, like it shows the importance, it shows the urgency, and it gives them what they want. That person is more likely to go out now and talk to people and, talk to their friends and network for you as a company rather than being like, hey, here's our pay structure if you refer somebody. So we call it incentives that actually work, meaning specific, targeted to each person.
Gotcha. And you were saying too, to keep people clarity on expectations. What does that look like? Is that processes? Is that a one sheet thing? Is it a verbal? What does that look like in your company? I'm curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're a well-oiled machine at this point, right? So like for us, I mean, you come in, you're onboarded, you know exactly who you're doing. You have reporting structure, you have org chart. Our org charts have solid and dotted line. Like we're really, we're a well-oiled machine. I spent many years figuring that out. But for most companies listening, if you're just kind of trying to build this out, having a written, it's, if you can break it down in time intervals, right? Like what do they need to know and do in the first 2 weeks, right? And ideally the first day. So you look at the day, you look at the 2 weeks, look at 30 days, 90 days, and then you start breaking it down quarterly because it can be overwhelming. I mean, I remember the first time I sat in a room with a consultant and he's like, we're going to build out SOPs. And I'm like, I got nothing. I have literally nothing. Like, where do I start? And that was the exercise he took me through. He's like, all right, on the first day, like, what do they need to know? He's like, what time do they start? I was like, start at 7. Okay. He's like, where do they go? I'm like, they go here. He's like, what do they wear? I'm like, okay. He's like, if they get lost, who do they call? Right. And so we started going through these questions. And then I was like, oh, this isn't too bad. Like, I can do this. And he's like, all right, within the first 2 weeks, what do they do? He's like, what if they call out sick? How do they log in? Like, and so I think if you break it out into little chunks, you can start to do it. But otherwise it feels overwhelming. I mean, it's like, yeah. How do you do that?
No, I know. I had the same thing in my business is working on processes. Oh my gosh, I avoided it for months. And don't be wrong, when I got it done, it's a way better oiled machine. It's like it's supposed to be, but it's definitely overwhelming, especially when you're a visionary of like, I know where we're going. I don't exactly know how we're getting there. And that's the house stuff. So if people wanted to find more about your business or the contractor consultants, where would they go?
The website, so the contractor consultants plural.com. Find a bunch of information and reach out. I mean, we're here to help. Like I'll give more knowledge to, like, we got tons of stuff, PDFs. Like, our genuine thing is, like, how do we move people forward, even if that doesn't mean you sign up for anything we have.
Awesome. I got a lot of free resources. I checked it out. A lot of great articles. I mean, you're just all over it. And I appreciate your passion for the industry, because I have the same. So I appreciate you taking the time for being on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me and listening. It's been a good time.